Another edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by thelines.com. I'm Eli Hershkovich, joined as always by Justin Perri here on the college basketball edition of Beat the Closing Number, handicapping the Tuesday odds board for January 14th. Justin, we have odds available as we're recording this here on Monday afternoon. So over 24 hours ahead of these games, we have openers. They aren't going to be exactly what you, the listener or viewer, may see on Tuesday morning or late Monday night, depending on when you're watching in or listening to this episode. But let's get right into it. Looking at Villanova, unranked Villanova at Xavier, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time tip on FS1. The spread on FanDuel, Xavier minus 2.5, minus 120. So nearing a full possession, total of 145.5. KenPom pretty much in line with this point spread. Xavier minus 3 is where KenPom has it. Other analytic sites like Torvik and Haslam a bit under 3. So KenPom maybe higher on Xavier than other analytical databases. Where does shot quality have this one lined at, Justin?
Yeah, we're also a little higher on Xavier here, Eli. Of course, thank you for having me back on the show. Always a great time to be here. We got a fun Tuesday coming up. A lot of big games are going to be on Tuesdays, a lot more volume Wednesdays and Thursdays this year. I've kind of already scoped out the whole season planning my own shows. So it's going to be fun. These Super Tuesdays are going to be great if you love those big matchups, and the rest of the week if you like, the mid-majors. But yeah, Xavier coming in as a team that maybe a little bit doubted, record at 10-7 in this Division I game. Shot quality, seeing them 12-5, which is the same record we give to Nova on the expected. Xavier, very efficient from three, efficient at the free throw line, gets in the post a lot, maybe should be taking more of those threes, but good at passing, good spacing, and they run that pick and roll a lot to get some of that action going. In terms of the regression, definitely shooting a little cold, 0.5% from deep, and then also just honestly impressed with their shot selection allowed on defense. Rim and three rate allowed on defense, going to force you into that mid-range, 25th most mid-range faced against, Eli. So it might be tough for Villanova to get the shots that they want, and I like that, especially for a home team in the Big East.
Yeah, a couple of things for me, just looking at this handicap in the matchup, aside from the number, and I'll get to the number here in a second, but Xavier, two of their Big East losses came without Zach Freemantle. So
right.
To your point, maybe you're looking at a team that is a little bit undervalued in the market. Also, I was looking into shot quality. Xavier is below league average or Division I average in post-up efficiency per synergy, but you look at shot quality, and I think you guys have them around, 45% on the expected post-up efficiency. So against a team in Villanova, Eric Dixon and this Villanova front line that isn't dominant by any stretch defending the post, this could be a bounce-back spot or at least a potential regression spot for Hughley, Freemantle, and this Xavier front court.
Yeah, and that, the way that those regressions equate to everything, which I think is pretty important if you start using shot quality, is so that expected 45% equates into the post-up looks to that 0.91 points per possession, because obviously you can only score 2 points in the post. So they're actually getting 0.82 right now, expected to be getting 0.91. So that's a pretty heavy difference when you're talking about a team that runs 9% of their plays in the post. So I do think this is a great spot to continue to bet on them. Those are good looks that they're getting, right? That is the 63rd best team in the post. 0.91, again, that's not necessarily the highest number you can get. You can obviously get a lot more from three. They're 1.15, 1.18 from their various three-point shots. But the thing is, post-up shots, like middies, are reliable. You go to them when you need that bucket, not when you're looking for your best shot, necessarily your highest value shot. But okay, end of the shot clock, let's go inside, or we just need a reliable bucket to keep the pressure on, maybe, depending on the game flow. Those are reliable buckets, and Xavier should be able to get reliable buckets at home. And that means they probably shouldn't fall out to a big deficit, which would ruin even their own kill shot to get further out in the game. I think the floor is very high here for Xavier tomorrow.
Yeah, big matchup too in terms of tempo. Villanova ranking dead last in the Big East in average possession length. Xavier wants to push the floor in transition. Villanova's transition defense is solid overall, but you look at the schedule that Xavier has faced, 33rd in defensive efficiency when it comes to the opponent so far this season. Villanova ranks outside the top 100, not only in shot quality, but on KenPom and other analytical databases. So this could be a regression spot, not only for Xavier's post-up offense, but just offense in general.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're going to see one of the softer defenses you've run into in the last 2 weeks, you have to think it's going to feel a little easier. Probably going to get more possessions, honestly, and that's a big deal, of course, because Xavier right now, the turnover rate 16%. That's not stellar by any means. It's definitely one of the worst in the conference. Seventh in the conference is not exactly going to cut it if you want to, be a threat for the Big East title and make a run in March. So I expect them to sharpen up with the ball, get more possessions, get more looks. And of course, as I always say, I always joke, if we could have named the site Possession Quality, we would have, because it is really about possessions. But at the end of the day, shot quality, a little catchier. But yeah, like Xavier.
Yeah, I will probably bet Xavier if I can get a cheaper price. Minus 152 on the money line. I would assume the market is going to maybe bet this line down a little bit. And I may even look to bet Xavier live if I can't get a better number pregame. But Xavier definitely worth a look for me in-game or pregame, just depending on how the market dictates this matchup over the next 24 hours or so. So on to a top 15 matchup over in the SEC. Number 11, Texas A&M in the latest AP Top 25 poll, taking on number 8, Kentucky, fresh off their win at Mississippi State over the weekend. This one tipping off at 7 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN on Tuesday night. This point spread over at FanDuel, Kentucky minus 4.5, minus 115 in the Wildcats' direction. Total of 154. KenPom projecting this line, Kentucky minus 3, but it is worth noting Wade Taylor, who missed the Alabama game, Alabama covering in College Station as 3.5 point road favorites. Buzz Williams didn't have much to say on his status moving forward. The expectation, per reports, is that Taylor's going to miss another matchup, and his knee is up in the air at this point. I would expect him to return at some point, but at least for the short term, it doesn't seem like Taylor is going to be suiting up for the Aggies. So where does shot quality have this one lined at, Justin?
Yeah, we like Kentucky a lot, Eli. They're just coming in looking like one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country in terms of the spacing that they get on their threes. Third best spacing in the nation, sixth best efficiency expected from three. Now, that is not how they're actually doing. If you want to know how Kentucky is actually doing from three, they're currently 52nd. So that's a pretty big differential, right? About 3.5%. But shot quality expecting them to almost be 40% three-point shooters. And that's just not been happening. So on the other side, though, you haven't really seen, I guess, the woes of that because their opponents are shooting 28% against them. So what you're seeing is kind of what you're getting, and because everything's expected to go up. So maybe more points in Kentucky games. I don't know if that's possible after the Mississippi State game with 185. We expected something around 165, so maybe not on this one. But yeah, third best offense in the nation per SQ in Kentucky. We like them a lot, have them ranked in our top 10 here. I would trust them at home against A&M. I know, coming off the Alabama loss, you would think maybe the bounce back, but yeah, they should probably go and lose this game by around, 6 points for what shot quality is seeing, because we have Kentucky in the top 10 and Texas A&M, who's in like the top 15, top 20 in a lot of places, is outside of our top 40. So this is a pretty good spot to attack on Kentucky, likely for a pretty cheap price for what might be one of the best shooting teams and the best spacing teams in the nation.
Yeah, a little bit of a disagreement from me. I'm not betting A&M, but obviously, right, no real value there, or at least in terms of the opening number as we're seeing it. Taylor's status, important to monitor. The expectation, like I said, is that he's going to be out, but also worth noting, A&M's transition defense ranks in the 18th percentile on a points per possession basis. That is where Kentucky thrives. They can get open looks in transition. We saw Jackson Robinson bounce back off of the Georgia loss. So Kentucky, if they're going to get clean looks, probably win this game by 2 or 3 possessions, which is where you have the number at. Kentucky, though, does struggle on the glass. Amari Williams, pretty soft on the front line. I know they played well at Mississippi State, but they shot well, which obviously mitigated those deficiencies on the glass. But on the flip side, Kentucky's three-point defense due for regression. A&M without Taylor isn't really going to crater that number in one direction or the other. Or I guess they're going to crater it and continue to show that Kentucky's three-point defense is due for regression in the future, because outside of Taylor, Zurich Phelps around 31% from three. Obasaki could shoot it a little bit from behind the arc. Hefner has found his stroke right around 35%, but A&M doesn't have enough shooting. If they had Taylor, I would probably consider playing them, or if Taylor was 100% at around 4.5, but they definitely don't have enough shooting without him to consider this a play.
And I think also, I mean, this Texas A&M defense subsists off of not letting you get shots up, because they're not exactly very good when you shoot. We're seeing like terrible spacing allowed, terrible shot making against, which basically means that they're due for a lot of those shots to start going in. Like, nobody's hitting anything against them, Eli. We're seeing a 51% field goal rate at the rim against the Aggies. Shot quality expecting 61%, 30% make rate from mid-range, 38 expected, 30 make rate from three-point, 34 expected. And again, if those efficiency metrics are influencing some of these models that really just look at how those rates come off, and maybe aren't adjusting enough for the fact that it came against Lamar, East A&M now. They played Southern, Oregon, Creighton, and Rutgers. It looked great, but I think that this Kentucky team is honestly maybe the perfect squad to tear them apart, because they're not going to turn the ball over, and they're going to take advantage of the space, and they're going to see 3 possessions, 4. I don't. This is probably going to be one of my bigger bets on a Power 5 primetime game in a while. So,
yeah, transition defense is going to be an issue if A&M isn't dominating the offensive glass. And Alabama and A&M, that was truly a war on the offensive glass with a bunch of fouls. I did play A&M second half in that one, hit on that. Alabama was due. I know you said A&M's defense was due continuously for three-point regression in a negative sense, but Alabama's three-point shooting splits at the half were around 60%, so I expected that to take a dip. They shot around 35% from the game, but still, on the road in Rupp is a different story than A&M at home in College Station.
Yeah, exactly. And you saw what like the analytical attack, which Alabama almost embodies perfectly, can do, and especially if they're missing some talent, which again could lead to less turnovers on defense too, not only less prowess on offense. I like getting in here. 4.5 seems nice. I would be shocked if it's not 5.5 tomorrow morning. Probably because I'm going to be playing it. So,
All right, fair enough. Let's shift over to the number one team on shot quality when it comes to shots at both ends of the floor, I believe, or just offensively.
Both.
Both.
Oh, no. The net. It's the net, right? So it's not. It's the combination of both. I don't think I've ever seen anyone lead both shot quality in offense and defense at the same time ever. Usually the number one team in offense is pretty weak on defense. The number one team on defense is pretty weak on offense, which is UCLA is number one defense, 70 offense, and Auburn is number one offense, 29 defense currently. But yeah, a new number one. We've had Baylor at the top for a long time, but do you want to tell the people who it is? Because I know I already told you.
Yeah, Louisville, 6.5-point road favorites at Syracuse. The Cardinals are the number one team when it comes to offensive shot quality. Total of 152.5 in this one at Q's. Syracuse back-to-back wins, but against lowly opponents. Louisville is red hot in ACC play, which correlates to their red hot shooting and shot selection. You would expect nothing less under Pat Kelsey. The Cardinals have won 6 straight games. What do you make this one at SQ?
With Louisville sitting at the Louisville, people are going to yell at me again. With them sitting at the number one team right now against a squad in this Syracuse team that we do think is maybe a little better than what you're going to see on KenPom, but it's definitely like right at the cusp of the top 100. I mean, what would you do if it was like, Auburn? That's how you should treat this game. So a number one team going up here, I'm going to take it. I would assume we're going to, expect this one to get pretty high. Our model numbers have not come out yet. They won't come out until tonight, so I haven't exactly seen what we're going to get. But, you're talking about Louisville's I accidentally clicked on Syracuse. Louisville's efficiency right now for what KenPom is seeing, coming out at a net 1.15 on offense, 0.97 on defense in terms of how we do it. Ken kind of has that factor into the number of possessions and all that good stuff. But for Louisville, for shot quality, if you wanted to equate those numbers, we're seeing what would be 1.30 or 130 offense and 93 defense. So that's a lot of extra points per possession. So yeah, I mean, an extra 4-5 points on the market, 5-6 points on the market, it's a lot. But getting to the number one spot, it isn't linear, right? Like 1 to 30 is not the same as 30 to 60, because the end behavior of that graph, you're really kind of escaping away from the rest of the group. And that's what we're saying Louisville's doing. So I've been playing them all season. They've covered 5 of their last 6. I think it continues.
You look at Syracuse offensively, they rank in the 77th percentile when it comes to post usage, and they're very, very efficient in the low post, which you would expect with Eddie Lampkin, two-time transfer. They rank in the 94th percentile on a points per possession basis. But Louisville's post-up defense is pretty solid, losing Pryor long-term, and he's been out for a while, hasn't helped. But still, if they could slow down Lampkin, this isn't a great spot to bet on Louisville for me. I would probably stay away, but at the same time, I don't like Syracuse offensively enough, just because they can't, or seemingly won't be able to score enough through Lampkin to keep this one within 2 or 3 possessions, or at least to my liking when it comes to a projection basis where I feel comfortable betting on the home dog.
Yep. Look, I understand. It's home dog season right now, right? I mean, I've been cashing plenty of home dog picks. We're seeing the market move towards home teams pretty decidedly in conference play. Like almost every night, home teams are getting steamed. So maybe you get a better line than what's out right now for the Syracuse team. But yeah, like you said, pretty good in the post. But they only use the post moves on 5% of their plays, Eli, which is definitely considerable. But the real problem to me is that they go into the mid-range 21% of the time, 40th most in the nation, take in threes at the 340th most rate. You give a team like Louisville that just takes good shots, does not allow good shots, they're just going to be more than happy to oblige you taking those looks, inside. And they're probably going to tear you up on the turnover contest too. Syracuse does not force turnovers. They just do not force turnovers defensively. And you have a Louisville team that you kind of need to take the ball away from, or else the shot efficiency is just too good. And you got another team that's just beastly in the mid-range, can outshoot you, get good shots, and then if they get into trouble, they got something to go to all the time. They can just get inside and work you. I would not be surprised to see one Eddie Lampkin get into some foul trouble as well.
Worth noting too, Donnie Freeman, Syracuse freshman big, has missed the last couple games. So monitor his status before betting on this one way or the other.
Especially if you want Syracuse. But
right. Yeah, 100%. On to our fourth game. And this one, if we're going in chronological order here. So looking at a mid-major matchup between North Texas and East Carolina, 7 p.m. Eastern time tip on ESPN Plus for you Degens out there. No point spread, I believe, out for this game just yet. Nothing yet, which is no surprise. They want to get the bigger Power 5 matchups out there when it comes to the opening lines. But why do you have this one circled, Justin?
Because this isn't a big matchup?
According to you and I, but not to the market.
Look, we like ECU a lot, man. We have them in the top 100 of shot quality teams right now, which is, of course, very different from sitting 170th on KenPom. So on that basis alone, pretty solid. 7-8 in Division I games right now for ECU, but sitting with 3 more expected wins at 10-5. The opposite, not as drastic, but still holds true for North Texas, a little bit lower than their KenPom ranking. And again, that's not necessarily the most important part. Like if you want to use shot quality numbers against KenPom, it's not just the ranking, it's actually the points per possession, right? So the ranking is a little bit looser. It makes it very easy to just communicate it, so I don't have to do like, points per shot this, points per shot defense. But I'm loosely referring to how they are actually doing compared to their efficiencies. North Texas out improving their record by 7%, a little bit hotter than expected for sure. Their defense always looks like it's supposed to do worse, but it's actually supposed to be doing better. So pretty interesting there for North Texas, especially post-up free throws. They're pretty good at the rim, and I think a lot of this will come down to how ECU can sort of manage that because ECU is a top 75 team in terms of frequency attacking the rim, and they're largely inefficient at it. But North Texas doesn't let you get there. So what's going to happen? This is a rock and a hard place a little bit, and we're going to see like if ECU can get that cut motion going, or I don't really know. They're going to end up in the post a lot, and they might get eaten up. So shot quality data does really like ECU, but like the analysis gets a little bit worrisome. The only other part where maybe you have a little bit of hope is that it looks bad for the North Texas offense too. So maybe a really nice under spot. No one might be able to score.
Yeah, the possessions are going to be at a premium for sure.
Terrible.
And then you look at the 3-point splits for ECU, shooting 26% from behind the arc on the season. RJ Felton, due for regression if you look at his 3-point shooting numbers over the last couple of seasons. Does that happen against a defense that is probably a little leaky from behind the arc, or at least a little leakier than the numbers would suggest?
Right.
So, yeah, also ECU covering at Memphis over the weekend.
Big get up spot.
Hadn't covered in, let's see here, their last 4 games before that. So maybe the market, maybe you're getting a little bit of value on the number too.
That's kind of like, you know, how the whole SQ thing works. So I think they pushed FAU too, I believe.
Depending
but that
on
was
the
a shot quality, right? Of course, but that was shot quality win, right? Temple shot quality win. South Florida shot quality win. Gardner-Webb shot quality win. North Alabama shot quality win. They've only been expected to lose the Memphis game by 10 points, but that is still a very, very solid result for this East Carolina team. Yeah, this is about, you know, where you can't really buy in at a better spot. It's their defense right now too. So they're allowing 79, 78, 75. Shot quality 65, 67, 71, allowed 84, 61. So that's crazy. Like everyone's just hitting everything against them, having their best games against this team. We could take a look. Temple and FAU games. It was definitely, Temple shot 9 of 16 on threes, their best of the season. They only missed 2 of 24 free throws, and on guard, and all their looks were guarded. So they didn't get a single open three, and they still crushed them. So, and East Carolina only lost that game by 1. So again, what's under the hood? This is a good East Carolina team that for some reason everyone's hitting everything against. We saw it against Memphis that, you know, it sort of came out to play a bit where Memphis couldn't maybe score. The defense looked better than you expected. A Memphis team not scoring that much is a little bit different than, you know, another team not scoring that much. They were actually expected to allow 87 points, only allowed 74. So could this be the start of the other side of the coin for ECU, where those good defensive efforts that are giving bad spacing and bad looks actually convert to clanks off the rim rather than a how the heck did that just go in? Because that's essentially how they played for basically like, again, since the start of December. They've won 1 game since the start of December. Shot quality only expected them to lose 2 of them. Crazy.
Right. So from a shooting split standpoint, good spot to back East Carolina. At home, too, I might get to the window there with you. We'll see on where this number opens up at. Like I touched on, it is not available as of...
Yeah, I mean, if you can get 5, though, and the total's high, that 5 just has value on principle, too, right? Like, if it's like, it should probably be a 4.5 already if the total's 8 points higher than it's going to close. And then on top of that, you have a little value on the defense. And I bet this thing comes out on SQ pretty near to a pick 'em.
The only caveat to that is low total deflated because of poor shooting. So if there is more efficient shooting, then do you get more possessions as a result?
Yeah.
That is the devil's advocate to that. Even though you have 2 lower tempo or slower paced teams.
Yep. I mean, it can always happen. We've seen it a million times, but I do think in terms of like what makes the most sense and how to approach it, when you see, you know, a lot of red on the left side of the screen, a lot of green on the right side of the screen, you know, offense versus defense, you just got to trust it. It's done well for me. So I'd imagine, honestly, I might like that total under more than I like ECU. It could, but at home, I don't think you fall flat nearly as hard as if you're like going on the road to North Texas after the Memphis game. They should, be feeling really good. That was a great result if you're ECU after a hard 6 weeks. I think they get it done. It might be a big win.
Fair enough. Let's move on to the fifth game we're going to discuss here, looking at Big Ten, Ohio State at number 24, Wisconsin, 9 p.m. Eastern Time tip on Peacock. Point spread, Wisconsin minus 4.5, juiced in their direction, total of 149. KenPom projects this one at Wisconsin minus 6. I will say
it's out too.
Yeah, it's down 2 points. Max Klesmit didn't play against Minnesota, so I do think his status is baked into this number a little bit, one of Wisconsin's most efficient three-point shooters. On the flip side, this to me might be my favorite spot on the board, and I'm looking at the road dog with Ohio State.
Wow.
Wisconsin's last 3 games. You want to talk about shooting splits that are due to regress in the opposite direction. Wisconsin, in their last 3 games, including a blowout win over Minnesota at home on Friday night, shooting over 48% from behind the arc. Their opponents have shot 33%. Now, I know Ohio State's three-point shooting was due for regression overall when you look at non-conference play, but it has kind of collapsed, and they've lost 2 of their last 3 games. So you can make the case that they're back to the mean at this point. There may still be a little bit of in anybody's regression model. If you want to say there's room for a little more of a free fall, fine, I get it. But if Klesmit doesn't play, or even if he does and the market bumps this thing up a little bit, Wisconsin's home court advantage is going to be mitigated by the fact that students aren't back on campus yet. They're not back until the 21st. So this isn't your typical Kohl Center game for Wisconsin. And Ohio State coming off of 2 out of 3 losses 2 losses in their last 3 games, a bad loss at home against Oregon, good Oregon team granted, but a blown second half lead. They have the matchup advantages when you look at their offense, ball screen action when it comes to the lead ball handler, so somewhat isolation defense. Wisconsin struggles, especially when you get that ball screen action against Bruce Thornton potentially, and this Ohio State backcourt. I like Ohio State here to keep this one close, if not win the game outright. Ohio State needs a quad 1 win when you look at their resume.
Yeah.
A borderline tournament team at this point.
Truly. It's crazy, especially when you're ranked 32nd in KenPom. We have them ranked 48th. So usually when I'm taking a peek at stuff, that's not even enough for me to be like, all right, I'm a little concerned. So I think that's pretty accurate. Wisconsin a little higher up at 19. I'm flabbergasted by the shot quality expected spread record for Ohio State at 2-14 though. So that's a little scary. I'm probably not betting Ohio State. I would lean Wisconsin. I'm not going to bet it. I would need a very, very friendly number, and I'm not getting that.
What number would you need?
4.5, 5. Probably.
Okay.
4.5 I would 100% be betting it. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, I think this is a pretty fair line. 6.5, 7 is probably where I'm at, I like the over. That's how I'm going to approach this game. You're very correct. The Wisconsin defense absolutely overperforming, absolutely looking better than they are. And that means an opportunity to expect more points. You have the 15th best offense in the nation in Wisconsin for shot quality going against the 82nd best defense in the nation in Ohio State. They are supported by their strong offense. Wisconsin is supported by their strong offense. Tempo here, both above median in the nation, and expecting both teams to see a little bit more scoring on defense. Ohio State and both teams expected to have 3-4% more 3-point scoring against them, and both teams expected to score 8% more on mid-range shots. So yeah, give me the over. Give me the over in this one. A little contrarian. Big Ten games tend to like to go under, but we've seen it this year. I think the talent in the league is improving. I think it's becoming a little bit more jump shot-ish. And KenPom does have like those really good numbers to sort of tell on the conference. So the efficiency in the Big Ten is 12th, but the tempo's 3rd, the effective field goal's 9th. The 3-point attempts actually 21st, but that tempo, they're just blazing. These teams are absolutely just firing. So and they're efficient from inside the arc. And then that's enough to drive totals over. And the free throw percentage is at 73. So it's not exactly the highest, but it's still high enough that these teams are going to make free throws. And they're also, both teams are going to foul close to 30% of the time. So yeah, expecting a likely chance that we see a potential home win. But yeah, I do think this is an over spot.
If the mid-range point, I like that you brought that up, because if Klesmit plays, he's dangerous in that from that area of the field, that vicinity of the court, I should say. But Ohio State against drop coverage, that's also why I really like this, because Wisconsin is very vulnerable with Crow on the court. And as good as Wisconsin is, conversely, in the low post, Ohio State's post-up defense is above average. Now, I know shot quality has them due for a little bit of regression, but with Bradshaw back, and you have Sean Stewart and Bradshaw pairing up, probably splitting around 25 minutes each on the court. Now, obviously, you have flexible lineups in there. You're not getting 25 minutes each in a given college basketball game, but roughly 20 minutes each for those two transfer bigs. So I like the matchup for Ohio State down low. Now, Ohio State is vulnerable on the offensive glass. We saw them that come into play against Michigan State. Michigan State, one of the better second chance, or at least when it comes to opportunistic second chance shots, especially when you look at the Northwestern game yesterday or a couple days ago. I know we were both on Northwestern on Sunday, and their cold shooting really
great live bet, though. Great live bet. I hit my live bet, but that's it.
Pre-game, it was a good spot. Michigan State, you would think, and Spartan shot the lights out in the first half, and I liked your second half look too, because Northwestern, you look at the shooting split, similar to Alabama, Texas A&M over the weekend. Both teams were due for regression in the opposite direction, so I'm sure that's why shot quality had that one in favor of the Wildcats second half. But regardless, long story short, I like Ohio State. You may be looking towards Wisconsin. I would assume if Klesmit doesn't play, that would be your pull towards Wisconsin around 4.5.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, sometimes when players sit, I'm a little more timid with my plays, and I'll go live. And I'll keep my hunch in terms of like, okay, I have value on that side, and let's see how it starts out. And if they're developing the shot quality I want and taking like a lead on the SQ, maybe not in the actual game, and I have like the dual verification of I wanted it pregame, I was a little scared, now I have the backup of, all right, they're actually doing what I thought, I'll rip it. And I think that's honestly a really valuable way to play. I think I've honestly enjoyed that a lot, of like not only betting the teams I'm taking pregame before they start, but also betting them again live when they get down and getting an even better number against the close, because first 20 minutes of college basketball game, the game's either over or it doesn't matter. It's really a binary scenario.
And also, just when you look at the market, I expected it a little bit. Market has already bumped up Wisconsin to -5.5, -115. So if Klesmit doesn't play, we could see this number dip like we did with Wisconsin and Minnesota. Didn't matter. Wisconsin blew out Minnesota in the second half. But I am circling this spot for sure for Ohio State to keep this within a couple possessions. Love it even more if Klesmit doesn't suit up. But last game we want to hit on here quickly, Baylor at Arizona, the 25th ranked Baylor Bears in the latest AP Top 25 at the Wildcats. Arizona bouncing back from a 7-5 non-conference record, struggling, but due for regression. They've gotten it in Big 12 play so far. Didn't cover against UCF, but won the game outright over the weekend at the McHale Center. 11 p.m. Eastern time tip, so late one for you out on the East Coast, Justin. ESPN has the broadcast. FanDuel has the line of Arizona -5.5. Vig in Baylor's direction. What say you?
Give me the points. Give me the points, Eli. Baylor is the team that lost that throne to Louisville this week. Sorry, not this year. But for the top team in the country, that would be on shot quality. And I like this Baylor Bears team a lot. They've been pretty good to me. I've seen them play. They develop good shots. Omier and Edgecombe inside are a defensive menace. And again, I think maybe Arizona's seen the two of the three like teams in the Big 12 that I'm least excited about, in UCF and Cincinnati. I called Arizona beating Cincinnati correctly because we were really low in Cincinnati. I got UCF covering correctly because, again, we're lower on Arizona and we were a little higher on UCF. But this is another spot where you can go against Arizona. You can take those points. Their offense still has some problems, but they're hotter than expected, especially under the rim. So a little bit of masking there, maybe getting a little bit more comfort from the market because, again, they look good. They're shooting 64% under the rim, expected 59%. And then defensively, expected to be allowing 0.06 more points per possession. So that's pretty significant. The problems really arise in terms of just the spacing allowed on defense, allowing opponents to get pretty good looks in that sense, and then a lot of open threes. So it comes down to really, will Baylor hit those shots? And everything at Shot Quality says yes. They're the top 10 three-point shooting efficiency team. They develop really good spacing, and they force the turnovers they need to really hammer this thing home. Almost every aspect of their team stats, their core stats, are green. The only thing they really are struggling with right now is their shot selection on offense, and I trust Scott Drew to get that right. They're not getting the free throw line enough, but these are coachable aspects that I think they can maybe figure out, and maybe it's a little bit of luck too. So I do think this is another buy spot on Baylor. It's not going to be the easiest travel spot. Maybe you want to wait and let the market attack the home team Wildcats a little bit more. I would not be shocked to see this thing close at 6.5. Get those 2 possessions if you can. People don't say there's key numbers in basketball, but I could probably have a good discussion about that with you.
Yeah, KenPom has this one at Arizona -4 to your point. My only concern is Baylor, a little bit of a lucky cover in overtime. So over the weekend at Arizona State, they led by 15 double digits in the second half. So you could argue Arizona State was lucky to get to overtime in the first place. And then Arizona failing to cover. I guess it depends on how you look at Arizona, but is there a little bit of misconception just when it comes to pricing with those results over the weekend in mind?
Arizona State's really interesting, that game, because I don't think I played Baylor, which is, I think I'd remember that, because we also were high on Arizona State, higher, and it's pretty rare for me to take a team we're really high on against another team we're high on at all. It usually has to be against a team we find pretty equal, or maybe we're a little lower on, unless it's like a massive, crazy difference. It doesn't happen too much. Shot quality is pretty accurate. There's only like 3 or 4 teams in the 360 that we have a massive discrepancy on, which seems fair. But yeah, I'm not really panicked by what happened at Arizona State. They were actually expected to lose, which is probably why they dropped out of the top spot in shot quality. But let's keep it real. That's a tough game. Arizona State, they were, that's a tough travel spot for them. My guess is, that game played a couple days ago. I don't know how it works for them. Are they staying in Arizona? I think they stayed out
Probably.
there. That's a pretty interesting advantage, considering that they were out there on the 11th only a couple nights. It would make no sense to go back to Texas to get rest and maybe it's a short flight, but I don't think they would bother. That might help. They a crazy cover there in an overtime for Baylor off the win against Cincy, but that was a good win. We expected them to beat Iowa State at Iowa State. Like, there's a reason this team is so high up. They are developing good shots. They got very unlucky in that game. I don't think Arizona is nearly the defensive behemoth, especially in their own home, right? Like, the Cyclones turn into like the monsoon seasons when they're on their own floor, but Arizona definitely can fall apart. We've seen it from the program time and time again. I just think I give Baylor that little programmatic edge to get in there, travel well, execute, good defense, good shot selection, and 9 times out of 10, I think that outperforms expectations more than whatever Arizona's been doing. Give me Scott Drew and the Wolverine VJ Edgecombe on the road, plus hopefully 6.5 if it gets there.
And keep in mind, like we've touched on with all these games, injuries, worth noting for Baylor, dealing with a couple of key injuries. I don't think there's any update on Langston Love, and Baylor has another injury worth noting too that I have to dig up with Celestine, and he's shooting 35% from 3, hasn't played in the last handful of games for the Bears. So depth-wise, a little bit of a concern. 2 games in 4 days at this point, even though you're not traveling. Just something to at least consider when you're handicapping this game. But Arizona probably...
I saw them go crazy in the Bahamas, dude. They're well conditioned. I'll give them that. Those boys are well conditioned. Scott Drew runs them hard. That's not a concern with me. And also, how much is a college basketball player truly worth, unless it's like one of the top 30 players in the nation, top 50 players in the nation, or like maybe like the most important guard to a team and no good distributor backup or something like that. And we even saw like Penn State, Oregon, they were missing their lead guard. It didn't even matter. Like they covered. Like college basketball's crazy. The Ewing theory runs rampant. Honestly, someone tells me, oh, this player's out for Penn State, I literally go, you should probably bet Penn State, huh? It's just, It's so like sometimes just stop being stupid. Like the market's probably going to go rush and overthink it. And it's system basketball more than it is anywhere in the sport of basketball. So yeah, only like you want to talk about a player that has a lot of impact. He just rolled his ankle. So
Johni Broome, yeah, and we'll touch on that at a later podcast. Auburn taking on Mississippi State, but no real edge for either of us in the market for that game. And it's tough to bet on or bet against or bet on Auburn for that matter in this scenario. Possessions, like when you look at possession rate for Johni Broome, like the amount of possessions he's actually involved in, it's a ton, but you do typically see the market overreact to those things. To your point, Dylan Cardwell is more than a capable big for Auburn up front and very good defensively, could switch 1 through 5. Mississippi State can't shoot the ball, so quick handicap there for us. If anything, I would even look for... Yeah.
Great coach.
Right. Great coach too. Yeah. Great offensive coach for sure. The one thing I want to say though about Baylor, just when you look at injuries, coming off of an overtime game, and on a 7-man rotation against an up-tempo Arizona offense. So that is, even though you're not traveling, that is the concern when you think about injuries.
Yeah, you're right. And bookmaker odds, bet online coming up. So I think I'm going to go maybe play some wagers. That's fun.
All right. So he is Justin Perri at Justin Perri 8 on X. Shot quality, college basketball, and NBA for that matter, data analyst. I'm Eli Hershkovich. Thanks for watching and listening to this edition of TheLines.com. Be sure to check out all of our content over at TheLines.com, betting previews and the best odds and sportsbook promos up at TheLines.com. You can also find our best bets in our Discord channel. Link is over at TheLines.com in the top right-hand corner. So for me, Justin, tentatively circling Xavier and Ohio State. Just depends on the number. You want to quickly go over what you're looking at? Baylor, Xavier?
Yeah, it'll be Baylor and Xavier. Hoping for a nice Baylor line for sure. But it's Kentucky certainly, Xavier certainly, and then Baylor as well, and Louisville. Definitely going to be on Louisville. Louisville is probably one of my favorite plays of the day, which is pretty crazy. Kentucky too. Hopefully we'll have a good day. Should be a fun one. Super Tuesday. We're back.
Thanks for watching and listening to this edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by TheLines.com. So long, everybody, and good luck with your college basketball picks.